Be honest for a moment. Do you ever leave a room full of people feeling more empty than when you walked in? Do you ever lie next to someone at night and feel like you live on different planets? Do you ever wonder, what is wrong with me if I feel lonely even when I'm not alone? If yes, this is your video. Today, I want to offer you a different answer. There is nothing wrong with you. You are not broken. Your loneliness around people is not a sign of failure, it is a sign that something deep in you is still alive and honest, still trying to speak. For a moment, let's stay with this and listen to what it is actually saying. Chapter 1, Naming the Feeling You Never Had Words For. Imagine a simple scene. You're out with friends in a warm, noisy room. Everyone is laughing, telling stories, sharing updates. You smile, you nod, you add your pieces, playing your part. From the outside, it looks like connection, like you belong there. But somewhere in your chest there is a small, steady distance, a quiet feeling of watching your own life from just a few steps away. You leave the evening more tired than when you arrived. Later you lie in bed and think, I was with people for hours. So why do I feel like nobody actually met me, like I was never really there? Most of us never learned how to talk about this kind of loneliness. We were taught to count bodies, not depth, to trust the numbers more than the feeling inside. If you have friends, a partner, a family, you shouldn't feel lonely, that's the rule you probably absorbed. When the rule and your reality collide, shame usually appears. But your body knows another truth, proximity is not the same as being seen. You can share a couch, a bed, or a group photo and still feel invisible. Your nervous system doesn't count chairs at the table, it tracks whether anyone is actually turning toward your inner world. It knows the difference between being around people and being truly met. Carl Jung observed that the more a person returns to their own soul, the more sensitive they become to what is real and what is only a mask. You may not use these words, but you feel the difference. You can sense when a conversation never leaves the surface, when your role is to listen, to support, to entertain, but not to be truly known. This sensitivity is not an error or some strange defect. It is your inner world refusing to call half connection enough. It is the part of you that notices when your heart is missing from the room, when you are performing instead of relating. That quiet discomfort is not your enemy, it is your signal that you are longing for something deeper. Chapter 2, How Your Early Blueprint Still Speaks in the Room. To understand why loneliness can feel so sharp even with people around, we have to go back, quietly, to the beginning. Long before you entered crowded parties or office meetings, your body was already learning what it means to reach out and be met, or not be met, by another human. Attachment researcher Bowlby showed that as children we learn what being with someone means not from theory, but from lived moments. If, when you reached out, someone usually noticed, held you, looked at you with warmth, your body learned a simple message: connection is a place where I can exist as I am. I am welcome here. If, when you reached out, you often met distraction, criticism, emotional coldness, or a parent lost in their own pain, your body learned another message: to stay connected, I must adjust. I must be useful, quiet, funny, easy, or invisible. This script sinks in very early and rarely arrives as clear words, it settles into your muscles, your breathing, your expectations. This is not about blaming anyone. Most caregivers did the best they could with what they had, often carrying their own unhealed stories. But your nervous system still carries the imprint. Modern neuroscience confirms what Bowlby intuited: the brain processes social rejection in many of the same regions as physical pain. Being ignored or unseen literally hurts. So when you sit in a room where people talk around you but not to you, when the focus is on roles, tasks, gossip, and no one really turns toward your inner life, your body reads it as a kind of low-level injury. Not dramatic enough to make you scream or run out, but deep enough to ache for hours afterward, as if you had been quietly pushed to the edge. That ache is what we call loneliness. And when it happens in a crowd, it can feel even worse, because the mind adds a second wound: everyone is here. Why can't I just be happy? It must be my fault. But it isn't. You are not failing some social exam. You are simply aware that your attachment system needs more than noise and motion to feel safe. What you are really longing for is attunement, the sense that someone is actually with you on the inside. Your system is looking for eyes that soften when they see you, for a voice that slows down when you speak about something real, for spaces where you do not have to shrink or perform to be allowed to stay. Chapter 3: Your need for depth is not a defect. There is something else about you that matters here. You probably notice tiny changes in people's tone, pauses that others skip over, the way a room suddenly tightens even while everyone keeps smiling. You sense when someone has checked out emotionally, even as they continue to talk. Many people push past these signals. They drown them in small talk, drinks, or endless scrolling. Not because they are bad, but because it feels easier not to feel so much. You, for whatever reason, don't have that luxury. Your system is tuned differently. You notice, you feel, and then you are left feeling alone in what you notice. It can be tempting to label this as too sensitive, too intense, too serious, especially if you have heard those words before. But what if this sensitivity is not an illness and not a personality flaw at all? What if it is your built-in radar for depth, a way your psyche insists on noticing where real life is and where it is only a performance? Jung would say that as the psyche individuates, as it becomes more truly itself, it naturally loses interest in purely superficial exchange. It starts to look for conversations where the soul is allowed to appear, even a little. When you sit in a group that never goes there, of course you feel lonely. You are wired for another level of contact. This doesn't make you better than anyone else. It simply means your inner world has grown in a direction that not everyone has followed. We all escape into noise sometimes. We all avoid hard truths. Loneliness doesn't put you above other people, it just highlights where your hunger for depth no longer matches your current environment. Chapter 4: Why You Quietly Pull Away. If you look back on your life with honest eyes, you may notice a repeating pattern. There were times when you forced yourself to stay in circles that didn't fit you. You laughed at jokes that didn't feel right, played roles that left you drained, and pretended you were fine while something in you slowly dimmed. At some point, something in you said, enough. Maybe you stopped answering messages as quickly, or you left group chats on mute. Maybe you began to sit out certain gatherings, telling others you were just tired. On the surface, it looks like withdrawal or coldness, but inside it is often a quiet act of self-protection. We all choose, consciously or not, between two kinds of loneliness: the loneliness of being half present in rooms that cannot hold our truth, or the loneliness of stepping back until we can find places where we can bring more of who we are. Neither option is easy, both can hurt. But one slowly erases you, while the other can become a bridge to something more honest. Your selectivity is not about believing you are superior. It is about refusing to live permanently behind a mask. And yes, we all sometimes fail at this. We all ignore others, scroll past their pain, answer with, "I'm fine," when we are not. You are not uniquely pure or uniquely flawed. You are human, learning to choose more carefully. The point is not perfection. The point is that something in you keeps pulling you toward what feels more real, even when it costs you company. That pull may isolate you for a while, but it is also the force that keeps you from abandoning yourself completely. Instead of treating it as a problem to fix, you might begin to treat it as guidance to honor. Chapter 5: The Cost and the Strength of Feeling Lonely Among People. Let's be honest, this kind of loneliness is exhausting. It is one thing to be alone in an empty room, at least the outside matches the inside. It is another thing to be surrounded, included in plans and photos and group chats, and still feel that no one really knows what it is like to be you. Over time, this can breed bitterness, a quiet story that says, "They are all shallow, only I see the truth." That story is a trap. We are all capable of shallowness. We all miss each other. We all fail to listen. Sometimes the loneliness we feel is exactly the loneliness we also, without knowing it, create in others. Real strength is not in deciding that you are different and above. It is in quietly accepting how sensitive you are to the absence of real contact and letting that sensitivity guide you toward a different way of living. There is a kind of courage in staying aware instead of numbing out, in refusing to pretend that crumbs of connection are enough for you. You begin by noticing, over and over, something about this doesn't feed me, and slowly learning to choose differently, without hatred and without contempt. That is quiet strength. It doesn't look dramatic. It looks like saying no to a situation that leaves you empty, reaching out to one person for a real conversation, or staying with your own feelings long enough to understand them. Chapter 6: 3 Gentle Shifts You Can Start Today. You cannot change the entire world, and you cannot magically turn every person around you into a deeply attentive friend. But you can make small, honest shifts in how you relate to your own loneliness, so that it becomes less of an enemy and more of a message you are willing to hear. The first shift is to change the story, not the feeling. The next time you leave a room feeling alone, don't rush to fix it and don't attack yourself. Instead of, "Everyone else is fine, I'm just broken," try a softer line, "I needed more depth than was available here. That hurts, and it also tells me something about what I'm longing for." You are not denying the pain when you do this. You are simply refusing to weaponize it against yourself. Your feeling becomes a piece of honest information instead of a verdict on your worth. Over time, this small shift can loosen the tight knot of shame around your loneliness and make it easier to respond with care. The second shift is to make one small, real move toward honesty. In the coming days, choose one safe person or one small moment to be a little more honest. Not a dramatic confession, just a crack in the mask, a sentence like, "Honestly, lately I've been feeling more alone than I show," or, "Sometimes I leave gatherings feeling emptier than when I arrived." You are not doing this to receive perfect understanding, you are doing it to let your outer world move one step closer to your inner truth. If the person can't hold it, that is painful, but it is also information. If they can, you have just opened a door to real connection. And if the loneliness feels too heavy, there is no shame in bringing it to a therapist or support group. The third shift is to create a small space where you are not lonely with yourself. Set aside 10 minutes a day with no phone and no background noise, just you, a chair or a bed, maybe a notebook. Ask yourself, without judgment, where did I feel most lonely today, and either write a paragraph or simply sit with the answer. The goal is not to fix anything in 10 minutes. The goal is to stop abandoning yourself the moment you feel alone. The more familiar you become with your own company, the less terrifying it is when others cannot meet you. You may still long for deeper connection, but you will no longer be a stranger to the one person who is always there, you. Chapter 7: A Different Way to Understand Your Loneliness. One day you may find yourself again in a familiar scene, at a party, in a meeting, on a train, online in a group. You notice the first stirrings of distance, that quiet sense of being slightly apart even while you are technically included, invited, and visible to everyone else. And instead of immediately thinking, "What is wrong with me?" a gentler thought may arise, "Of course I feel this. My soul is asking for something deeper than what is here." You might still feel tired. You might still decide to leave early. But you will no longer add the second wound of self-contempt on top of the original ache. You will walk home, or close the laptop, a little more on your own side. Your loneliness among people will not disappear overnight, but it can slowly transform from a verdict into a signal that says, "I am meant for real presence, for mutual seeing, for spaces where my inner life is allowed to exist without shrinking." Until those spaces become more frequent, let this truth stay with you: you are not broken for needing this. You are not wrong for feeling the lack of it. You are not behind in life because you have noticed how thin some connections feel. You are simply awake to something many people are too frightened or too busy to notice in themselves. Thank you for having the courage to notice, to feel, to listen. On the days when you find yourself in a full room with an empty heart, remember this: you are not alone in feeling this way. Somewhere, in many quiet rooms, other souls are sitting with the same ache, the same questions, the same longing for something more real than what they have now. In that shared longing, you are already less alone than you think. And if you want a quiet place that understands this kind of loneliness, you can come back to this space any time, press play again, and let these words remind you, there is nothing wrong with needing depth, and there is nothing wrong with being the one who notices what is missing.